Hi, everybody. My name is John Chafee. I'm the reality check coordinator for Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, Allegheny counties. Most of you have either seen me on planning Zooms or know me from previous shareholder meeting events that we've done in previous years. But I'm here today to go over who is Altria and what is a shareholders meeting and how do they help us in our mission that we're trying to do in our local communities to make them a healthier place to live, work, and play. So the first thing is let's go over who is Altria. So the one thing that we always talk about in New York is we are not against smokers or vapors or tobacco users. We're against the tobacco industry or big tobacco. And Altria is one of those companies that we would consider as big tobacco. So way back in 1920, Philip Morris and Company held their first annual report, which makes them a public company. And then, way fast forward 83 years to 2003, the Philip Morris Company is renamed the Altria Group, which is the parent company at the time for Kraft Foods, Philip Morris International, or PMI, and Philip Morris USA, or PMUSA. So many of you might not have known, but a tobacco company they don't just own tobacco companies. They've owned food companies. They've owned portions of alcohol companies. So some of you might be shocked that Kraft Foods, which is still puts out my favorite macaroni and cheese, Spirals, at one point was owned by Altria. So let's fast forward another 4 years, and Altria purchases John Middleton, which makes cigars and pipe tobacco. Now, many of you might not have ever heard of John Middleton, but I bet you've heard of their most popular brand, which is Black and Mild. And we'll get into these other companies in the slides coming up, showing why Altria is what makes them big tobacco. So in 2008, Altria and Philip Morris International actually become separate companies. So what that means is Altria sells Marlboro cigarettes and other tobacco products only in the United States. And then Philip Morris International sells tobacco products pretty much everywhere else but the United States. That is changing a little bit, and we'll talk about that when we get to looking at heated tobacco and also nicotine pouches. So what's really interesting about that split off is it comes a year before, in 2009, when President Barack Obama signs the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act, which puts more limitations on how tobacco companies can get their products out there, give away free products, how they advertise, how they merchandise. So those limitations would have had an effect on Philip Morris International if they were still under Altria. Now that they've separated off, Philip Morris International does not have to follow the same laws in other countries as Altria does. So it was very beneficial for them to actually separate as two companies. And then in 2009, Altria buys U.S. Smokeless Tobacco Company, which makes chew, snuff, and pouches. In 2017, Altria purchases Nat Sherman Holdings, making premium cigarettes and cigars. And then in 2018, Altria actually buys 35% of Juul Labs for $12.8 billion. Why this is very important at the time is at the time of this purchase, Juul has almost 70% of the whole vaping market. So for them to purchase into Juul, they actually decided to quit selling their own similar vape product called the Mark 10 and only advertise, promote, and get out Juul products. So at the time, it seemed like a home run that they were buying into a company that owned the majority of the vaping industry. Down the road, we find out it doesn't work out too well for them, which we'll talk about in a second. In 2019, Altria establishes Helix Innovations, which makes on-nicotine pouches. Now, back in 2019, nicotine pouches are not a new thing. They've been around for a while. Their popularity now, though, as we've seen and you've seen with your peers, is nicotine pouches are becoming a lot more popular with young people, as more people are catching on to and making it harder for young people to vape. Young people find alternative products, and that's what a nicotine pouch is, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then in 2022, Altria partners with JT Group on Horizon Innovations to sell heated tobacco sticks. And again, I'm not going to cover them in a lot of depth, but I'll talk about it right now. So before, Philip Morris International and Altria actually had an agreement that if Philip Morris International had a product such as IQOS, which is a heat not burned tobacco product, very similar to what Altria and JT Group are working on. Altria got the arrangement to sell those products in the United States. That seems to be changing now as Philip Morris International and Altria seem to be becoming more separate of companies. These partnerships seem not to be as beneficial to both of them. So right now, you have Philip Morris International, which is selling IQOS, and one of the first cities it's putting it in now is Austin, Texas, as it's got the FDA's approval. And Altria is working on their own heat not burn tobacco product with JT Group called Plume. Now, the other thing, remember when I talked about nicotine pouches? Philip Morris International owns the company Swedish Match, which makes Zyn and sells them in the United States, and Altria has on. So as we've gone through time, where Altria and Philip Morris International were in partners in a lot of different products and selling, now they seem to be more in competition with each other. So in 2003, Altria sells its 35% of Juul for $250 million, loss of over $12 billion. So that purchase of Juul at the time was a huge loss. But when Altria sells Juul, it's not that they're getting out of the vaping market. They're looking for an alternative, and that alternative is in 2023, Altria buys Enjoy Holdings, which makes pod system vapes and are also FDA approved, and they also make disposable vapes, and we'll go over those in a couple slides here in a minute. So let's look at all of these individual companies and what makes Altria big tobacco. So the first one and the most important one is Philip Morris USA. Their cigarette brands include Marlboro, Basic, Benson and Hedges, Cambridge, Commander, Dave's English Ovals, L&M, Lark, Merit, Parliament, Players, Saratoga, and Virginia Slims. Now, the ones that everybody's probably the most familiar with is Marlboro, Basic. I see Parliament, Merit in a lot of my stores, but also Virginia Slims. In 1972, Marlboro becomes the #1 cigarette brand in the United States. In 2023, it actually holds over 42% of the entire cigarette market in the US. So they don't have the majority, but they're half, I mean, they're close. And when we think of Marlboro, it's very important. When we think of Marlboro, we don't think of one product. Philip Morris USA actually sells 63 different types of Marlboros. So Marlboro is not one product, but 63 different types of products. In 1983, Philip Morris USA becomes the largest U.S. cigarette manufacturer in revenue and market share at 46.9%. And then in 2018, the one thing that we always talk about and our focus now for Mobilize Against Tobacco Lies is same snake, different skin. The reason we talk about that is the industry is constantly changing and trying to they say, like right now with vaping and nicotine pouches, we want to switch adult smokers to a potentially less harmful product. But when they come out with these new products and new marketing, it also brings in new customers when we talk about, unfortunately, young people. So in 2018, they introduced their first of its kind in the US, a reseal pack of Marlboro Ice. So let's also look at some of their advertising. So we talk about, lately we have the Me Too moment. or movement, I mean. And back in the day, in the early, this is an advertisement from the 60s when women were trying to, the women's movement of become equal in men when it comes to pay and different job titles. Virginia Slim in the industry really latched onto that. So we make Virginia Slims, especially for women, because they are biologically superior to men. And you've come a long way, baby. And you can see there that the woman looks very similar to Wonder Woman. She has the W on her, which, probably is they mean to stand for women. But they really, as we know, latch on to different movements in society with different groups of people in our society. And then you have merit. And the only reason I wanted to show this is because this is still going on today. So you see the first one is a brown, orange, yellow, and then it says merit filter, saying that there's, they have filters on their cigarettes. And then the next one, the merit ultra lights, which has the blue light color. What studies have shown us over time is advertising and colors and wording influences people to think that one cigarette is not as harmful as another cigarette. And it's illegal now for the industry to market products using words like ultralight, but they keep the colors. So for most people, color and word association. And then of course menthol with the green. So I wanted to show that. It's not the greatest picture, it's not that clear, but it shows the purpose of wording and colors. And then the last one, of course, the Marlboro Reseal Smooth Ice. And you can see there in the top, when it opens, it has this little flap that when you close it, it goes over and closes it off. So there's no air in there and it's keeping it fresh. So the next one is John Middleton. And like I said previously, many of you probably have never heard of John Middleton, but you've probably heard of their most popular product, which is Black and Mild. So John Middleton manufactures machine-made large cigars and pipe tobacco. And why that is important is different tobacco products have different rates of tax on them. So that's really important for these to be labeled as cigars and pipe tobacco. So cigar brands include Black and Mild, which you see in the bottom left there with the apple. 13 different flavors. And the one thing we've learned is that young people are very intrigued by flavors, but it's not just the flavor of the tobacco, but then also the color of the packaging. Like that green really jumps out at me. And then you have Middleton's Cherry Blend, Golden Mild, and Prince Albert's flavor. They have two flavors. The cigars come in a plastic and wood tip. So the other thing with the industry and these different companies, we know cigarettes are the most littered item in the world. But if you've ever done a tobacco litter pickup, you will also find these plastic or wood tips. So it's not just cigarettes that lend itself to trash and tobacco waste, but all these other products lead to that. So the plastic tips, but also the cellophane packaging and the cardboard box that they come in. Pipe tobacco brands include Prince Albert, Carter Hall, and Middleton's Cherry Blend. And then in the 1960s, Cigarillo brand Black and Mild comes up with 4 flavors. And what it is, and I did not know this, but they're air-cured tobacco and pipe tobacco mixed. And then you can see here on the right, that is one of their cigarillos, and it's jazz flavored, but pipe/tobacco cigars, you can see underneath it. Excuse me. So just one more company, and Black and Mild is one of the most popular cigar brands that's on the market. The next one is U.S. Smokeless Tobacco, which includes moist smokeless tobacco brands Copenhagen, Skoal, Red Seal, and Husky. Copenhagen is the #1 moist smokeless tobacco, and Skoal is #2. And then Red Seal and Husky are considered discount and value products. So does Altria not just control the #1 cigarette brand in Marlboro, but they also control the #1 and #2 smokeless tobacco product in Copenhagen and Skoal. And these products, again, we can't think of just it being one product. It comes in a variety of forms. So Copenhagen comes in fine cut, long cut, pouches, and snuff. And then Skoal comes in fine cut, long cut, pouches, and Bandits. What's really interesting is Bandits is a pouch, but it's smaller than their normal pouches. So it's not just flavor, it's not just how the tobacco is cut, but also how it's delivered. So if you don't like a big Skoal pouch, you can go to a small Bandit pouch. And then Red Seal and Husky come in fine cut and long cut. So let's look at some of these products real quick. So there you have Copenhagen. Skoal comes in a variety of flavors. I'll just show one, which this one is citrus. And then you have Red Seal, and you can see on there it says long cut. And then Husky, and that says long cut and wintergreen. But also just look at not just the product, but also the marketing. So Husky, look at like this aluminum, but bright green color. It really, the green for some reason draws my eye in. And then Helix, which nicotine pouches are becoming more of a topic, especially when we talk about young people exposure to nicotine. So in 2021, Altria purchased On from a company in Switzerland. And this quote here is right from their website. So On nicotine pouches are a tobacco leaf-free way to get nicotine satisfaction without smoke, spit, ash, or odor. So that's the one thing we get from vaping was Blue was really marketing that. You know, I remember the commercials with Jenny McCarthy. Now I can get my nicotine without smelling like cigarette smoke. Well, the same thing, the marketing with these products is you're not going to smell like smoke. You don't have to spit. There's no ash and no odor. And then they do contain nicotine. And what's interesting between nicotine pouches and smokeless, like moist smokeless tobacco, is nicotine pouches you're supposed to put between your upper lip and gum. And I'm sure all of you have seen the videos on social media, but users refer to it as an upper decky. On comes in 1.5 milligrams nicotine, 2, 3.5, 4, and 8. And 1.5 and 3.5 are only available online, not in stores. What's very important to realize about this and why I bring this up, when a cigarette holds anywhere between 10 and 12 milligrams of nicotine. When the user smokes it, they're getting less than 2 milligrams. So when you look at a nicotine pouch and it's 8 milligrams and that person puts that in their mouth, they're not losing any of that nicotine. So what we know about vaping and then nicotine pouches, users of these types of products could actually have a stronger addiction to nicotine than smokers. And you can see same thing, different colors, different flavors. This is the other thing why I brought up the tips with the cigar products. So the tobacco industry has always been really brought to the forefront of you're creating a product that's the most littered item in the world. It's not biodegradable. It leaches as it breaks down, it leaches chemicals back into our environment. So with Helix Low and On, if you flip over the pack, there's actually a spot for users to put the old nicotine pouch. So this is just one way that Altria is getting ahead of that argument that they create all of this waste in communities. They can say, listen, this is not us. We provide our users a place to put the nicotine pouches when they're done. It's the users who decide to be irresponsible and throw them on the ground. And then the last product we're going to talk about is Enjoy. It's one of the most recent products that Altria has purchased, and we already talked that it does have FDA approval as of 2022. So ACE is their pod system. It comes in tobacco, 2.4% nicotine and 5% nicotine, and then rich tobacco, which is 5%. These have all been FDA approved. Now, they also come in menthol, but menthol has not been approved or denied by the FDA. So while it's under review, it can be sold. And then the ACE device has a 36-hour charge. So the marketing of this product, and this is right from the Enjoy website, less fluff, more puff. And then the marketing for the Ace Pods is they're 2.7 times the size of Juul Pods. So they're bigger than Juul Pods. And the marketing is they're big, like really big. So that's one more way that even Altria, which is one of the largest tobacco companies in the world, understands that Juul is, even though we're not seeing it amongst young people really, as they've moved to disposables, Juul is still the has the largest share of the vaping industry of over 30%. So the industry knows that. So what do you do when you have a product that is that popular? You try to emulate that. And even big tobacco is not against doing that. So June of 2022, Enjoy received FDA approval for their Enjoy Daily, which is a disposable tobacco product, and comes in rich tobacco, 4.5 nicotine, and extra rich tobacco, which is actually 6% nicotine. And then the menthol, which has not been approved but is still under review, can be sold. And the marketing of Enjoy Daily, sleek just got sleeker, and disposable never seemed so replaceable. So same type of cool marketing, same type of color play with the menthol.